Okay, so here we go. Are we ready? This is so exciting. I can't wait for my other dishes too. Okay, so here we go. All right. Oh, I forgot my apron. Oh my gosh, I would have wrecked my clothes. Okay. Let me be more official. My dad's shaking his head and laughing at me. He thinks I'm ridiculous. Okay, anyways. Daddy, you want to come here? Come here. Okay, Daddy, you can come. He's shy right now, but we'll make him taste the noodles. All right. So welcome to Cooking with Prof C Club. This is our first class, and we're going to be learning how to cook noodles. All right, but before I start and teach you how to cook noodles, I need to do a few safety features. Okay, number one is I'll just assume that maybe you haven't really cooked a lot, all right? But I want to show you how to cook, how to cut, and how to use your instruments just to make sure that everything is safe. First of all, you need a knife. Now look at my $4 knife, very thin. It's been awesome. Not the fancy, expensive knives, $4. But let's just say as I'm cooking, over the days and months, my knife is a little bit dull. Okay, look, kind of dull, but I need it nice and super sharp. Let's just say I don't have a sharpener and I don't want to spend my money on a sharpener. That's okay, because all you need is a glass bowl. You see my rim, or you can get a cup that has that. And then all you have to do is turn it over, and then on an angle, slice it a couple of times, who knows? Let's try a couple more times like this. Super sharp. We have to rinse it to make sure we don't have, the extra stuff on it, filaments. So I rinse my knife, wipe it. I'm good to go. All right. Now let's make sure that your cutting board is stable, because if your cutting board is not stable, it'll not only cost you time, but it becomes a little bit dangerous and you can slip. All right. This cutting board is actually really great because it has the rubber parts to it. So if you look, it doesn't move, right? But my dad and I, we recently bought this other cutting board because we like to have two cutting boards. And we thought, oh, that's pretty thick enough. Look, it's when you start cutting, it starts sliding around. All right. Ooh, dangerous. So what all you have to do is get a cloth, put it down, okay, and put the cutting board on top. And look, no slippy. All right, but I don't really like using this cutting board. Okay, I don't like the way it cuts. I like this cutting board. All right. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, the next thing is actually how do you hold a knife, right? Now I'm left-handed and you don't want to cut. And a lot of times when people start learning to cut, they cut like this, all right? And then you can slice the tips of your fingers. That was a little bit ouchy, but also we need every part of our body, okay? So what you need to do is you need to curve your fingers and then use that as the foundation. And then we cut like this. So those who are right-handed, you curve and you tuck them in. So that if you were to cut like this, it doesn't matter because it can't cut your fingers. And then also as we're cutting, we're going to be pushing the knife to our fingers, and it's our fingers that's going to tell us where to cut. Our fingers are going to be guiding, and this will be pushing against it just to go da-da-da-da-da. And that's why I'm left-handed. So that's why people go do-do-do-do-do, they can cut really fast. It's because we're using this as a guide. Does that make sense? A lot of times people try to cut this way like this. That's a little bit more dangerous and more, okay, use your hands like this. All right. Now, today we're going to be cooking noodles. It's quite advanced for a first class. However, the reason why I'm doing it is I want to show you how easy it is to actually cook noodles. And then within our noodles, you're actually going to be learning how to cook multiple dishes. So in the end of just this one class, you should be able to cook like 100 dishes. All right. So let me give you an outline of what we're going to be doing today. And then we also have to think about how are we going to build the flavors. We want to build our flavors, build the profile of those noodles, because our noodles will kind of soak in all the deliciousness of all the flavors that we're bringing in. Okay. Also, we don't want to be washing lots of dishes. So what we do first is we're going to have the oil, and we're going to have some garlic and some onions. So if you like garlic and onions, so I have garlic. So if you have garlic, right, we'll take that out. Usually I use about, I don't know, 2 or 3 clovers or whatever you call them. All right. And then the first part is you want to cut this hard part off and put that to the side. And then you want to kind of smash your garlic. Let me see, like that. Okay. So be careful, because sometimes if you hit it too hard, your garlic will jump ship. Okay. So just be careful, but just go like this because we don't want the outer skin. And when you crush it a little bit, see my beautiful garlic. So if you have garlic, take your garlic out. Also, what's really great for noodles is actually onions. So I don't know if you have onions, All right. And if you have onions, make sure you wash your onions. And then we're going to cut very thinly at the edges. And then we're going to take the skin off. I personally don't really like onions to eat, but in noodles, it's really great because it's very sweet. So it can help the sweetness of our delicious noodles. All right. So just cut your garlic. All right. And then what we do is we cut our onions. All right. So cut your onions and be careful. Okay. It's a little bit on the slippery. All right. And we pull the outer skin off because we don't want the outside because you can't really eat it. All right. What actually I usually like to do is actually have a bowl beside me, and then I can put all the garbage in there, and then I can just, and I put a little bag in there and I can just toss it to the garbage. All right. That's another way of doing things. All right. But I'm just going to put it here, put it in this container. This container actually used to be for tofu. You know, so I don't know how many of you like tofu, but usually the tofus come in a nice container, and it's actually perfect size. So we don't throw this away. We actually reuse it, and we use it quite a lot because it's a great size and very light. Okay, so I take my onions out. Now the way, it's up to you how you want to eat your onions and your toppings. Do you like big chunks with your noodles, or do you like small pieces? I personally like to have every bite to have a little of something. Also, it's faster to cook. And when it's faster to cook, it's less likely to get dried out or burned. All right, so with my onions, I want my onions, the way I'm going to cut is I want my onions to be kind of like the same length of my noodles. All right, so I'm going to cut it lengthwise this way so that it's like this. So half circles. But do you see how thin my knife can cut? It's so thin. Oh, my eyes are kind of getting a bit watery now. So I'll just step a little aside as I cut. Now remember, when you cut your onions, it's actually easier when you're cutting at a higher point. So what I'd like to do is when I cut and I get to the middle, I like to turn my onion around, and then it's a lot easier. I notice it's a lot easier to cut when it's a bit higher up than lower. Okay. Okay. It seems like a lot of onions, but you'll see once you start cooking it, and of course it depends on how much noodles you have, but usually it's like a pack that's about 400, 500 grams that could feed about, say, 4 to 6 people. The onions, it seems like a lot, but you'll see everything shrinks. Same thing with your vegetables. It'll actually shrink down a lot as well. Okay, so when we cut, what we're going to do is we're going to when we start cooking, we're going to put oil, and we're going to use our garlic and our onions to flavor the oil. Then you have to think to yourself, how am I going to cook it in steps? The first step will be protein, okay, because that takes the longest to cook, but also it has the most flavor to come out. And so what we do is I'm going to show you how to marinate. Oh, my eyes are really going this time around. Okay, so what you're going to do is, that's probably bad to do, to wipe my hands with my hand that touched the onions, but whatever. Okay, so what you're going to do is, this doesn't happen in my other 2 classes when I do noodles. All right. So what's going to happen is we're going to put the proteins in. And when we finish our proteins, we take that out, and the juices and the oil will actually flavor our vegetables, right? And so when we do the vegetables will have extra flavoring. And so then that way we're building our flavors. Okay, so just have a little bit of outline, right? So garlic, onions with oil, proteins. And then we also have a bowl that will be all the cooked ingredients, because that's how we cook in stages. So we cook our proteins, and everything should be cooked to about 90%, because when we cook it with the noodles, it's continuing to cook. So we don't want to cook it to perfection, because then it's going to get overcooked in our noodles. Does that make sense? Right? So we cook with our veg. We're going to cook with our proteins, put it aside. Then we're going to cook with our vegetables. We're going to put that aside, and then cook our noodles. All right. So, but what do we need to know about? I will do the marinade soon. So what I like to always do is, when I'm going to use proteins, I like to save myself some time. So what I do is I make my marinade first, and then as I'm cutting and chopping up my proteins, then I can actually transfer it right straight to the marinade. Now for noodles, it's amazing how little bit of protein you need. So maybe about a fistful is actually more than enough. All right, so let's make our marinade. So for those who have a marinade of some kind of protein or shrimp is awesome, for noodles. All right. But so you get your bowl. So we have a bowl. Okay. You're going to get a spoon. So it's about a medium size. Okay. So remember what I said when I said tapioca flour? That is key. It is key for everything. Every time you cook protein, you're going to want your tapioca powder. This is awesome. This will make sure that your proteins stay nice and soft. Some people use cornstarch. I haven't used cornstarch. Maybe it's the same. I don't think so. I think tapioca starch is the best. And I'll show you also many other ways to cook with this dish, with this ingredient. So, but how much are we going to use? Well, it depends on how much meat. So for me, I'm going to use about maybe 3/4 of meat of the size of my hand. So I will use one heap, and maybe just a little bit more. Okay, like that. Okay, then what's really great for chickens and pork is actually hoisin sauce. All right, now this bottle should be able to last you for like a year. Okay, because you really don't need a lot. It's very salty and very powerful. So be careful how much you put. Remember, you can always add in, but you can't take out. So what I'll do is, and it's actually not that much, but maybe like a squirt, and that's it. So that is probably about a teaspoon, perhaps. So it's only a squirt. That's all we need. Okay. Every time I cook with proteins, I always like granulated garlic powder. Okay, I'm a little generous on that because I really like the flavoring of this. Now you'll add in all the other flavors. And what I use is a little bit of sesame oil, but just a splash of this. This actually is very powerful stuff as well. So just a little couple of drops like that. And that's all I need. Okay. And then I'm going to use soy sauce. So I actually recommend this brand made from Taiwan. Taiwan is the most lovely country, one of my favorite countries. My parents were made in Taiwan. This is actually less salty than other brands, but even with this soy sauce, we only want maybe a spoonful. And if you're not used to pouring just straight, because sometimes actually I've poured too much, you can always be safe than sorry. And you can actually use your spoon and kind of pour here to make sure that you don't pour too much soy sauce, right? Okay, so like this. So we can just pour not even a spoonful because it's very salty, but we just want the taste. Okay, so a little bit of I want just a little bit more soy sauce. So maybe it's about a teaspoon of soy sauce. Okay. Now, every time you cook with soy sauce, you have to remember this is married to sugar. Always have sugar. This is married to sugar. These are long life partners. Same thing with your proteins, long life partners with tapioca starch. Okay. So with the sugar, I would put in maybe 2 little heaps. Okay. This little spoon actually came from a plane on Air Canada when we were flying. I thought, oh, that's a perfect spoon. It's not too big and can control how much you put in. The reason why I put sugar with soy sauce because it gives it a tangy flavor. So it's really great. Now we also want to add just a little bit more salt because you have to remember we're not going to eat. We're going to be cooking this with noodles. Right? So there's going to be another noodles and other ingredients. So we do need a little bit salty. And I actually, rather than using a spoon, I actually like to use my fingers because I like to feel how much I'm putting in. So we're talking like a pinch. So a pinch of this Himalayan pink salt. I love using this salt. First of all, it has a great taste. I noticed that we use less salt than like normal salt. And it's very beautiful. And you can't get it mixed up with anything else, with like sugars, because they all look about the same. And then also we do MSG, but for those who are kind of like, MSG. Anyways, we love it. It's accent. We call it accent. And we put a little bit like that. Okay, I think I put everything in here. All right. Now what you'll notice is that the marinade has lots of dry ingredients, especially because of tapioca, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use water, but not too much water. We only want enough water to be able to mix everything together. And even if it's a little bit clumpy, that's okay, because when you have just washed your proteins, the water will actually go into it as well. So I'm thinking like maybe just even like a spoonful. Let's try. Maybe just a spoonful of water. It's just enough to marinate everything together. Let me see. No, I think I still need like maybe a touch more of water. Yep, that's enough. Okay. So then just mix that all together. So I should have used a bigger bowl, but I was just too lazy to get a bigger bowl. So I just have to be more careful in mixing. Okay, so you just mix that and make sure it's all well mixed. You still need a touch more water. And the way I actually like to mix, well, not usually not with this bowl, but just to make sure that everything is all mixed together, I like to just push it on the edges. And when I push it on the edges, it actually makes sure that everything is smooth and everything is mixed well. Okay. This is not a normal bowl that I would use. So I can't do it too fast. There, see? And it's sort of kind of like this. Okay, so hopefully your marinade looks like this. But if you put too much water, don't worry, because when we add our protein and if there's still too much water in it, just that when you pour it into your pot, just don't put in the extra sauce. Okay, so mix that up and that's ready to go. So today I'm actually going to be using pork. Okay, the last couple of classes when I did the noodles, I actually used chicken, but this time I want to change it up for my daddy so he's not eating the same thing over and over again for the last few days. All right, so then I'm going to do pork. Now, one key thing to remember about meats is that you can see the grain, you can see the I don't know what you call it, the meat, and it actually goes one way, right? You want to cut against the grain, against it. So if you see all the meat strains are going one way, try to cut the other way. And now for the noodles, I want my nice and super thin and small strips because it'll cook faster. But I like little pieces. I don't like huge toppings in my noodles. Okay, unless it's shrimp. Yeah, then I want huge pieces of shrimp. So because it's for noodles, I'm going to cut it nice and thin as I can. Okay, and then we want to be efficient with our times. So after we cut how much meat we want, all right, we're going to pile it and then we'll turn it to another direction to make sure that we have small pieces. Okay. Actually, this is already a lot of meat, so I'm not even going to use the rest. See, it's very small. And then I'm going to turn it over, and then I'm going to cut into small pieces. This will cook a lot faster, and then it's not going to overpower your noodles. Sometimes when my dad sees all stuff and he would say, "Where's the noodles?" Right? My daddy's so funny. Okay, he would prefer like, all noodle, like 90% noodles and a little bit of topping. My mom and I, we would prefer like 70% toppings and then like 30% noodle. All right. Okay. So so then that's a little, okay. Maybe I might do a little bit more. A really great thing to do actually is if you have a lot of meats, you may want to cut up the whole thing and then marinate it together. And then just cook only the portion that you want to cook and then put the rest in the fridge. Actually, when it sits and marinates more, the salts from the sauces actually keeps the meat tender. So sometimes we do that because we want to save time. So we would just do a big batch of chicken or whatever it might be and to marinate. All right, so let me just take a few more pieces out because it looks not so much. And I also have a lot of marinade. Okay. So now that you've done your now you've done the marinade and then you've done your meats. Because we cut this into smaller pieces. However, we want to mix this up. However, let's just say you don't want noodles and you just want, chicken stir fry with vegetables. You would actually just make your chicken pieces bigger, your meats bigger, and do the exact same thing, except for that you would not add salt or anything to the vegetables, but only just to the meats because the salts from the marinade would be enough. So you'll see from mine, I actually use too much sauce, but I'm not just going to dump it. I'll make sure that I don't pull in all that sauce into my pan. Okay, but my proteins are ready. Okay. Also, I'm going to go a bit fancy today. I'm going to use Chinese red sausage. This is super delicious. All right. And the reason why this is so good is because it's sweet and it's salty, but also because it's oily, what you do is you cook this first and then the oils, will help flavor everything. It's the exact same idea as bacon. That's why bacon is so delicious. Okay, people would use the oils as well to use that in whatever the dish is, and that flavoring, it really comes out. Okay, so I'll just do this Chinese sausage. Okay, so now I have two proteins. I have my sausages, and I also have my pork. Okay, so now for vegetables, here's some things and some concepts to know. When you're cooking with vegetables, you have to think to yourself, who's going to go in first? Who's going to cook first, right? Does certain parts take longer than others? And for leafy things, the answer would be yes. The stems take longer to cook than the leaves. Okay, so what you should do is we would cook the stem part first. And when that's halfway cooked, then we throw in the leaves. And because we're going to be cooking noodles, then we're going to cut thin slices. But if you just want just vegetables stir fried, you cut them in bigger pieces. But it's the way of cooking. And so like bok choy and napa, there's a big stem part here. This is actually going to take way longer to cook than this leafy part. Knowing that, what you do is you get a big bowl. This is going to be my vegetable bowl. And what I'm going to do is the leafy part I'm going to put at the bottom of my bowl. All right, and then the stem parts, or the ones that cook longer, will be on the top. That way, when I bring it to the stove, all I have to do is grab from the front, and I just slowly pull from the bowl. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut vegetables up. So we're going to be smart with our time, and we want to combine we want to group all of these together. Okay. Okay, and then we're going to just cut that. And because it's vegetables, I'm going to just cut them into thin slices. And then I'll just push that over to my, I'm going to cut my leaf parts and put that in first. Okay. So cut your vegetables, and also with napa, you can actually curl it in under, so it's more controllable. And then, so what I'm going to do is first I'm going to take the leaf part and put it at the bottom, because that's the last to be cooked. Don't worry if you don't get all of it out. All right. And then, because the napa, usually when you pull it off the stem, it has this little part here that we actually like to cut off a little bit and not eat it because it's a little bit tough. Okay. So that's in my garbage pile. All right. And then I'm going to cut this thin. How thin? This thin. Right? Because this is going to cook much faster. All right. And it's for noodles. But if I was just going to stir fry it, it would be like 4 times thicker than that. Okay, so do the same thing. And actually, having noodles this is a great way to eat vegetables. I know, some people don't like vegetables, but if you can kind of hide it or make it more tasty with lots of other things, then people will be more likely to eat it. So before I put this on top, I'm going fancy today, and I'm going with mushrooms. All right. Now we have to be careful with mushrooms because they're round and they can move around. We don't want to cut ourselves. The easiest way to cut mushrooms is if you cut a little corner off, because if it's just for family, they don't care what the mushroom looks like. They just care what it tastes like. I cut it flat because when it rolls, it's hard to cut. I'm making it flat so that way it's easier and it's more stable. And also I'm able to cut faster. Okay. And mushrooms, because white mushrooms cook very fast, and they're great for noodles because they have lots of flavor. I put that at the bottom of my bowl. Okay. So usually I cut that. If I was doing this for a party, I wouldn't do that because that looks pretty bad. It looks like I got cinchy on my mushrooms. Okay. And so I would actually take the extra effort and then make them like full mushrooms. Okay. But since it's just my daddy and me and we don't care. All right. And because I'm teaching right now, so I just want to speed up my process. All right. So cut the mushrooms. And you can never have too much vegetables because it will shrink a lot. Even though it looks like a lot, it'll be a whole pot. By the time it's done, right, it'll shrink. And then you only have like a half a pot of vegetables. So don't worry. Vegetables are very good for you too. So I believe you're supposed to eat double the amount of vegetables than protein. All right. So then we're going to move this over to the top because that is the hardest. But out of all the vegetables that I'll be using today, the longest that actually takes is actually my celery. Okay. But I like celery. It has a lot of flavor. So I'll use celery as well. Okay. And plus it was on sale. So we got 2 celery for $2. That's an awesome price. Now with celery, it has a string, right? There's a string right here. So we want to be smart. We don't want to cut this way because then it becomes more stringy. We're going to cut this way, right? So let's save some time to cut it in half. See, that's pretty good. We cut it in half again because that's enough for us to cut. And then let's just cut that up. And what I'm going to do is celery takes longer because it's a harder vegetable. I will cook that a few seconds longer than before I put the other parts, which I'll show you soon. All right. So all my vegetables are ready to go. Okay. Any vegetables actually is great for noodles. What's really nice also is zucchini. That's my dad and I's favorite vegetable, zucchini. Zucchini is really nice because it's nice and soft, has a lot of juices can come out and help with the noodles. All right, so, and then maybe we should take care of the noodles, okay? So you have your noodles all nice and soaked. The noodles that I'm using today is fantastic sweet potato noodles. I don't care about the brand, I just care that it's sweet potato, okay? And now my sweet potato is very long. This is how long my sweet potato is. It goes from here to here, right? That's too long. I actually love long noodles. My dad can't stand it, so that's okay. We will cut it. So also when your noodles are too long, it becomes very difficult to stir, right? So what we do is we either use, if you have nice fancy scissors, cooking scissors, you can use that, or just use your knife and go and cut it, right? But since I have this, I'm going to cut it in multiple places. Doesn't matter where I cut, as long as they're small pieces. And you'll see when we're actually stirring the noodles, it gets a little bit difficult. All right. So actually smaller pieces of noodles are easier. Okay. So if you have your noodles, okay, now we got to strain our noodles. And that's why I say this part is actually one of the most important parts of noodles. The problem with what people have with noodles is maybe there's too much water. And it's because you didn't get the water out of your noodles. And this is how you do it. Now we have a strainer, and that's why I said, hey, metal, because when you pour it, you don't want to move around a lot. Okay, but if you have plastic, that's okay. All right, now we're going to pour it first. Okay, and so what people do is like, oh, okay, then I'll just put it in here, right? And then I'll just let it sit and it'll be fine. And the answer is no, that is not fine. It needs some more tender loving care, okay? It needs attention. And what kind of attention? We're just going to drop it down and then jerk it up. Can you see the water coming out? Okay, and then what I do is I'm going to turn it around, shake it around, or you can actually go in there and just kind of move it yourself and watch. I don't know if you can hear or you can see my water droplets, but it's a lot of water. And then if you think that you're done, no, you're not done. Try one more time, but really try to get all the water out. You don't have to get every single drop out, but a lot of times, sometimes there's a lot of water still at the top. And especially if you have a lot of noodles, you really got to make sure you turn it around. Okay, but I don't really have that much noodles. Okay, so, and that was actually probably like a third of a cup that I actually drained. And the reason why we want all the water out is because you want to be in control. You want to control the water. You don't want the water to be controlling you. So now my noodles are ready to go. Okay. So now what you'll notice, especially with a lot of Chinese dishes, is that it's all in the prep work, because then when it comes down to cooking, all we want is high heat, and then we're going to go. Now, before we go though, we have to make sure that we have a cup of water beside us, just in case the pot gets a little bit too hot or you start to see things starting to brown a little bit too fast. We can just drop a little bit of water and it'll cool things down. Okay, so please now make sure you get a cup of water, put it beside the stove, and then also get a big bowl. The big bowl will be for all the things that will be cooked, because we need to pull. Remember I said we have to pull all the stuff out into a bowl. Okay, and we're going to go in stages. All right, so I will meet you at my stove. Remember I said to get a wok, and you'll see why, because it's a lot easier to stir. So I pour 1 cup of water beside me. Most likely I won't even use that much, but just in case. All right, this is my brother's second child, my little brother's number 2 child, Avery. She's very cute. Same thing with her her older sister, Claudia. Okay, so then I'm going to get a bowl. That's going to be for all my cooked ingredients. And this is where we're going to actually start using the oyster sauce, which, and I said try to get the scallop abalone sauce if you could find it, or you can use any sauce that you want, but we just need a little bit of extra sauce. And I like to use a different sauce than the Hostine sauce. Now I'm going to get my spatula. Now this is where you're going to get your spatula and your chopsticks. Remember I told you to get chopsticks? All right, and if you don't have chopsticks, that's okay, or any wooden thing, but not metal, because it'll scratch your pot. And then also bring all your ingredients now to your stove because you're going to need them all nearby you. All right, so I have my chopsticks, I have my spatula. I'm going to just dump all my onions. I'm going to dump all my garlic. Okay, I'm going to dump that right in there because that's going to be ready. That's my first. Oh, and I also forgot that I have some orange pepper. So I will quickly just wash that. And also for looks. What Chinese people like to take in consideration is presentation. And that's why when I saw orange pepper, I was like, oh, this will be fantastic. Because first of all, it's sweet, but it looks great in my dish in terms of looks. Into slices. And that way, when it cooks, you'll see that it'll pop the color. That is also why you'll see in Chinese dishes eggs because of the yellow color. Okay, so now we're going to get ready. So we want to turn this up on high. Okay, and then we have to use oil. All right, don't be shy and don't be thinking, oh my goodness, you're asking us to use a lot of oil. We're not. It's actually way less than a Chinese restaurant. All right, so here we go. We get just like 1 scoop of oil, but don't worry, we're going to be using this oil again. After this cooks, we're going to keep the oil in there. All right, and maybe just a touch more. All right, just because we just want to make sure we caramelize not caramelize. We want to brown our onions and our garlic. So this is going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so as you know, I'm all about saving time. And actually, if I wasn't cooking with you, I would actually go now, and while I'm waiting for this to heat up, I wouldn't just stand here. I would actually go and wash my pots, right? Maybe wash the dishes, rinse some stuff out, because while it's still wet, it's very easy to wash things, right? And then I can do other things, right? Okay. And usually if I'm cooking and just to save time, I would actually cut this up first, put it in the pot, and then go. And then as I'm waiting for this, I would cut up my vegetables, cut up my onion, cut up my protein, make the marinade. And that is why once you get a hang of it and you know how to do all the components, you should be able to cook probably in about 15-20 minutes. And another thing that you need to know is that when you're cooking vegetables, you'll start to see it turn color. So the greens will turn greener, all right? And we also see it'll start to change into kind of like a transparent-like color. And then for you to kind of cook faster, sometimes you can put a lid, right? And then the steam and keeping everything in actually cooks a lot faster, all right? But putting a lid on things sometimes might make things more soggy. So you have to know like what vegetables are good to cover, what vegetables are not. And then if you have also one thing I'd like to tell you is to make sure is that if you don't use, say I don't use all of my celery, obviously, make sure that the celery stays inside a bag. Because if it's outside and it's in a drawer, it actually starts to get very wilty and gets very soft. But if you put it in a bag and it's still open, it actually keeps the freshness a lot better. Now, can you see my onions? You can start to see it has now turned color, and it does look a little bit more transparent, right? Oh, I should turn on my light. That would be even easier. So it's doing well. And once the onions are about cooked, what we do is we're going to turn our pot sideways because we want the oil to run. The purpose of the onions and the garlic is to flavor our oil because we want our oil flavorful for our protein. Okay, so we're building our flavors, don't forget. We want a great flavor profile for our noodles. Now you can see it's starting to turn a little bit brown. Okay, and actually when you start cooking the onions, they actually turn sweeter as you cook it. Let's just say you overcook and you burn your garlic. Let's just say your garlic ends up burning. It's better to start all over again because that burning taste of garlic will ruin your whole dish. Okay, so let's try not to burn our garlic so we're not wasteful. All right, so, but now my onions are just about ready and my garlic is turning a nice golden brown. And sometimes when things are cooking, like this garlic is cooking a little bit too fast, just push it to the side, push them out. Okay, and just say, all right, everybody else can cook a little bit. Now I'm good. I'm going to now scoop everything, but I want my oil to run. Okay, so just be a little bit patient. The oil will run out. If you scoop it too fast, you'll take the oil with it. And we don't want that because then you have to add more oil because we don't want anything sticking to our pot. Now remember, just because your pot might say it's stick-free, yeah, don't believe it. Put a little bit of oil. All right. All right, so then I'm going to scoop it and put it into my bowl. So I'm going to try to save my oil because that's really delicious oil now. Okay, so there we go. Okay, now you judge how much oil. Yeah, so I actually can fill my whole surface is all oil. Now, remember I said the Chinese sausage, so you probably don't have the Chinese red sausage, and if you do, you're lucky. But what we're going to do is I'm just going to cook that, and I'll show you how to use it. So this is actually great stuff. So what we do is once it starts getting hot, I actually will turn it down. Because what we're trying to do is, you see all these white pieces? I don't know if you can see this white piece. That's fat. Okay, so we don't want to be, you know, biting into fat as it steals over. So we just want to get the fat out, the oils out. And we want to, I'm going to turn that down now to about a 4 at medium low. Okay, and I'm going to quickly turn it because otherwise it will burn. Okay. And then if there's too much oil, that's okay. Because what we do is we scoop it and put it in a boil. We can either then reuse it for the noodles, or if it's still too much, we just use it for another dish, like for tomorrow. No big deal. Okay. So you can see that my sausages are getting brown. So that's really nice. Okay. It did not too much oil came out. So I don't need a bowl to scoop out the oil. Also, let's just say if you have a little bit of sausage left, like even like Polish sausage, even half a Polish sausage, you know, even a little bit. It's amazing how much flavor that can bring. So I would actually cut a little few pieces and then put that in your oil first before you start cooking your vegetables or whatever it might be. It has a lot of great taste. Now I'm going to put this back up to high, and I'm just going to wait for a sec because I want my pot really hot when I cook my protein. Okay, my pot is pretty hot, but when I start seeing it smoking, which it is right now, I'm going to put it in. Okay, so I don't want all this extra. You could say I have all this extra marinade, but I don't want that. So I'm just going to make sure I don't put that in my pot. Okay, now we do protein. So we drop in the protein. All right, and now we have to be patient. The protein, and all we have to do is move it and try to flatten it so it's like maximize the surface area. Everybody's sticky. Everybody loves each other. Okay, but sometimes you need your space. Right, so let's move everybody around. Move all your little pieces and just let it sit for a sec. Okay. All right. Because what we want is a nice golden, you see there, pork cooks faster because it's small pieces. But what you'll see is it has turned brown, golden brown. See? Golden brown, nice and golden brown. So you want to flip it to the other side. All right. And then when you see it starting to cook, you flip it. Then everybody needs to separate. So what you do is you use your spatula and you shake them all out, okay? And then they'll fall apart. And now you can see my pot is getting kind of hot. It's cooking too fast on the outside, all right, getting brown, but the inside is not. And that is why you use if you put a little bit of water, you'll see the steam, and it cooks it really fast. That'll help. The faster it cooks, the more moist it is. And you can see all the juices getting a lot better in here, right? And it also helps me to separate. Remember, 90% done. All right, so it's a little bit pink on the inside. That's okay. Now I want to take that out. Okay. Now, of course, my meat has taken up all the oil, but I only need a tiny bit. I just want like maybe a spoonful, just a spoon, just a little bit of oil, just to kind of get my thing around. And now we want to cook the most difficult first, the most meaty. Okay, and that will be my celery. I noticed celery actually takes longer, so I'm going to cook my celery first. If I don't get all of it, that's okay. And I also cut my celery nice and thin. The thinner you cut it, the faster it can cook. Right now, this celery doesn't the water. There's no water, no juices for it to come out. Some vegetables have water come out, but not this one. So I'm going to put a little bit of water, okay, because I don't want it to burn. All the nice flavoring for my protein is now in my vegetables. Right? All right. Now you can see my vegetables has already turned color. Okay, so that means I should put in my stems of my napa. All right. So we pick up and then that other, I don't know what it is called, but it's just I call it Chinese vegetable. So all the stem parts come out. Okay. Have their debut. There we go. Now we're going to stir that around. Then add just a little bit of water. Make sure you don't pour too much water. We just want a little bit. This is also where we're going to add some salt. Okay, this is where we're going to add a little bit of, just a little sprinkle. Make sure you spread it around. A little bit of accent, just a pinch of salt. Okay, right. Now, as we're waiting, and then we make sure we stir it around. And the reason why I ask you to get chopsticks, this is the best way to stir. It's the fastest way and the most even. All right, so nice little trick there. Totally worth buying some chopsticks. If you don't have wooden chopsticks, that's okay. Because if you go to a Chinese restaurant, they have disposable chopsticks. Use that. Okay, you just got to make sure you wash them properly. All right, you can already now see that my other vegetables is now turning color. All right, so you just want to wait another second on that. Okay, and watch it. Make sure you can still see the water bubbling, so nothing is sticking to my pot. What you'll notice is if you don't have enough water, you're supposed to start to see brown. Okay, now I'm going to add everything else, all my other vegetables, and my orange peppers, because it looks really nice. All right, we're going to stir that around. Okay, now we're almost done. Now, as we're waiting for our vegetables, I actually had forgotten to put in pepper. What I like to do now is I know that all that noodle will need a little bit of more flavoring. So I'm going to be using pepper. So I usually like to put extra pepper on the cook side. Okay. And then what's really key for noodles is actually oyster sauce, but I don't like oyster sauce. It's too dark and it's way too salty. I like abalone or scallop sauce. But how much do I put? Just a spoonful. Okay, this can go a very long way. So I just want a spoonful in my cook. Okay, a little shaky. It's a little thick. That's enough. Okay, and then we stir this up a little bit. Maybe add a touch of water again, just a touch, just to make sure nothing is burning, because my vegetables aren't quite cooked. All right, that looks about 90% to me. All right, vegetables are quite forgiving. All right, so then we're going to dump it all together. Okay, now we only need 5 more minutes and then we're done. All right, now, okay, we don't want our noodles to stick, so we just can put just a little bit of water. Or what you can do is, if your vegetables are ready, you can put your noodles together and just put it all in. Okay, but you know, it's always nice to kind of stir your noodles a little bit first. Okay, so for a couple of seconds, doesn't matter, right? Okay, and then what you do is just put all your noodles in. Make sure you get all of it. Don't be wasteful. No point in putting the garbage. All right, and then sweet potatoes are awesome because they're very forgiving. Now look, it's already turned color. See, it's already turned transparent. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put there's juices, right? So what you're going to do is you don't want to put water now. You can actually add the soup. So that's nice. That's a lot of flavor. That's from my protein. That's from all my vegetables. And that's going to taste awesome. And you're only going to need a little bit of water. Okay, so then we'll turn that around. All right, now my noodles are a little bit lonely. All right, so let's put everybody together. That's it. Okay. I have like way too much toppings for noodles. All right, so I know my dad's going to say something about that. But we're going to now separate. So what you want to do is pick the middle and pull it up. And once you pull it up, try to grab the sides of the toppings. And what you'll notice is as you're cooking, all the toppings and the protein will naturally fall on the side of your pot. And what you need to do is bring them back. Okay? Be inclusive. Everybody together. All right, everybody. All the little pieces. Everybody has to come together because it's going to be. And then I would actually turn off my heat because I don't need the heat anymore. I don't want to overcook because it's just going to take time to do my noodles. Depending on the kind of noodles you have, sometimes it's clumpy. So jab your chopsticks in there and pull it up. Pull it up and then shake it. Shaky, and then it will separate. And if you notice that it still looks a little bit clumpy, add the water on it. And the water will separate it. But be careful that you don't put too much. And that's it. The dish is done. Okay, so now the moment of truth. I don't know how my noodles taste. So let's get the judge in. Daddy, can you come here, please? Can you please taste my noodles? Thank you, Daddy. Okay, here comes my daddy. Here's my noodles, Daddy.
Wow, so looks so good.
Thank you, Daddy.
So nice color.
Right? Very beautiful, right, Daddy? Okay.
Great.
Salty enough, isn't it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
My dad
very
said it needs a touch more salt, but that's okay.
I ate more salty than she.
Yeah, my dad likes salty, so a little bit salty, but even just, it's amazing how just even a pinch of salt can make a difference. Even just a pinch.
This noodle is pretty good.
Yeah, and my dad says this noodle is very good, and also sweet potato noodles. I mean, obviously when you taste the noodles, you can't go, oh, that's sweet potato. It's because of the chewiness, and it's very forgiving. If you screw it, you can't really screw up sweet potato noodles. All right, other ones you can, like vermicelli rice noodles. It can get very soggy and overcooked and mushy, but not sweet potato noodles. So that's why we like sweet potato noodles. Look how beautiful that looks. So let me just do a bit of a recap, okay? And tell you all the multiple dishes that you can cook. I taught you how to do protein, right? For the noodles, we cut it in very small pieces, right? Because it cooks faster, right? The smaller you cut it, the faster we can cook and the faster we can eat, right? But let's just say you want chicken stir fry. Cut the chicken in bigger pieces, or the protein a little bit bigger. But the marinade is still the same, all right? And then what you do is you stir fry that, which I just showed you. But when you take that out and you put in the vegetables, do not put any salt or anything in it. All right, because usually when I do that just as a marinade, as two dishes, a protein plus vegetables, I never put any salt in the vegetables. Otherwise, your dish will be too salty. All right, now with the marinade, if you like chicken, do you guys like chicken? Okay, if you got chicken, you just chop. Okay, you chop it into smaller pieces, into pieces because it cooks faster, and a toaster oven. Don't heat up your whole stove. That's a waste of electricity. You get a toaster oven. You make sure that you put aluminum foil on the bottom of the pan tray, right? And then the chicken, what you do is you chop it in big chunks, no bigger than maybe this size, all right? And when you do the marinade, put it in the night before. Let it sit at least for overnight, okay? And I would actually make a lot. And what you do is when it's all marinated, I guarantee that the meat will be a lot more tender. And then when you cook, it's only 15, no more than 15, 17 minutes. You put it on the tin foil, put it in the oven. The rest you put away. Now, let's just say, oh, so delicious. But then after a day or two, you're like, oh my Lord, this chicken again. But you have a whole batch of it. That's okay. What you do is you put it in Tupperware. Actually, you should mix it in Tupperware because you put a lid on it. Put it in the freezer. You put it in the freezer, it's ready to go anytime. And it saves tons of time. Does that make sense? Okay. And then with the vegetables, right? Same kind of idea. And actually, if you blend, let's just say you buy vegetables and one is kind of a little bit tasteless, add another vegetable to it and make it duo, and actually makes it a lot better.